एकमक्षरं हृदि निरन्तरं भासते स्वयं लिख्यते कथम् हृदय कुहर मध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता पवन चलन रोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम् देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तद्भावशुद्धिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः कोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो वरधिया दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं In this, the Thursday Satsangh from Ramanacentre Center for Learning, the South Bangalore Center, as usual, we'll be reading from the work Guruvachakakkovai by Ramanasramam. We'll be reading 2 verses. Each verse reading will be followed by a short meditation on its meaning, and after each verse reading and its meaning is read, there will be a 10-minute Atma Ucharan practice. After these 2 segments are over, there will be a summing up by our president, Dr. Shardaka, and that shall be followed by the chanting of the Ramanashtotram by Vaibhavji and Pratnama. We begin our satsang by taking one verse from the work Guruvachakakkovai. We are reading from the segment Experience of the Truth. The other two segments being Investigation into Truth and Meditation on the Truth. Today we are reading from the segment Non-Dual Jnana. The subsegment Non-Dual Jnana, verse number 961. When the ego dies through surrender to Shiva, Shivaya Namaha, the fire of perpetual surging devotion begins to burn. When the ego dies through surrender to Shiva, Shivaya Namaha, the fire of perpetual surging devotion begins to burn. That which shines in that brilliant flame of one's own experience, Swanubhava, is the radiance of pure being, the invincible Shivoham, Shiva am I experiences. Soham Spurti Taya Arunachala Shiva Purno Vibhati Swaya. I'll read the verse again. There is a short note from Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. I'll read the verse. When the ego dies through surrender to Shiva, Shivaya Nama, the fire of perpetual surging devotion begins to burn. When the ego dies through surrender, the perpetual surging devotion begins to burn. That which shines in that brilliant flame of one's own experience, Swanubhava, is the radiance of pure being. The invincible Shivo Aham, Shivoham, Shiva am I experience. The note Nama or Nama is usually translated as surrender or obeisance. That is, in Shivaya Nama, the Namaha is taken as surrender or obeisance. In Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi, Bhagavan defined it as the state in which the mind does not manifest apart from the self. The surrender is defined by Bhagavan as the state in which the mind does not manifest apart from the self. So we find the non-dual jnana is the place where the dual paths, apparently dual paths of bhakti and jnana merge and surge together without any difference, without duality. Bhakti is jnana, jnana is bhakti. Jnana can be defined in terms of bhakti. Bhakti can be defined in words that are apparently of awareness. Here Bhagavan takes the route of beautifully describing the state of total awareness, the total being, the pure being. From the Bhakti Marga, the Bhakta who is the Purna Jnani, and the Purna Jnani who is the highest, the greatest devotee, for he has done the Atma Samarpanam. What is his experience? That is what is said here. When the ego dies through surrender to Shiva. Now, the jnana experience of pure consciousness is the absolute state of surrender. Since this, if the sadhana is taken perspective of, is given some credence, then the one who is abiding in the self clearly knows that the self is ever present. It is the adhara. It has been the adhara right through the apparent sadhana. Therefore, it is Shiva. Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shiva. So when the ego dies, it can be said that surrender has been accepted by Arunachala. The surrender has been accepted and the ego's death has been ensured by Arunachala by his Purnam. Because he is Arunachala, hence that is you. If there is only Arunachala, who else can be you? That is what is said here. Tattvamasi, the statement Tattvamasi is brought to truth from Bhakti Margam by Bhagavan. When the ego dies through surrender to Shiva, nothing is mine and there is no I to hold. Therefore, there is only the pure consciousness, Shiva, Shivaya Namah. Then the fire of perpetual surging. In Dhyana Marga, this is called Akhandakara Vritti. When we are meditating on Ramana, the Jnanam, if I want to describe it as Bhakti, Ramana has consumed all the lokas. And he is now effortlessly running all the lokas. Nay, he is effortlessly shining as Ramana only. There is no loka. It is only Ramana. And one is effortlessly aware of this surging joy, this surging flame of Ramana. Because Ramana and Shiva are not different. Now one is in the center and Ramana is going on all around. So who is aware of whom? Who is aware of the Ramana Nama having consumed everything? It is I. There Bhagavan consumes us as the self and shines as I, that is the surging flame. There the Bhakti and Jnana lose all their differences. That which shines there is the brilliant flame of one's own experience. It is Swanubhava because the sadhaka has not gone anywhere. Bhagavan says in Upadesha Saram, he says that Sattaya hi chit, chittaya hi aham. The one who started the enquiry is still existing, isn't it? He has not gone anywhere. Only his ego nature has been burst by the Purnatvam of Arunachala. And since Arunachala alone is there, the Swanubhava, the divisionless consciousness, is oneself only. Soham Spurti Taya Arunachala Shiva Purno Vibhati. Purno Vibhati means there cannot be any words, there cannot be any ego. Therefore, Arunachala alone is. Now, when Arunachala alone is, will he call himself Ishvara? There is nothing to govern, there is only he. Therefore, he is the self. Therefore, as there is nothing apart from him to be omniscient of, there is nothing apart from him for him to be omnipotent of, there is no apart from him to permeate and be omnipresent. There is only the self, only the Atma. Soham Spurti Taya Arunachala Shivaka Purno Vibhati Swayam. When the Purna Vastu is shining as I, that is Swanubhavam. Because there, it is not that Ishvara has become absent. It is Ishvara has consumed everything, all the lokas and the individual who started the sadhana, and is shining in the Purna, the resplendent nature as I. All the Triputis which are having division as the seer, seeing, the knower, known and knowing, these are false. These are the snake, and they are consumed by the rope of I. Call it the surging joy of bliss and ananda of bhakti, or call it the Purna Vastu of Atma. Bhagavan finishes this verse by saying, you should consider it neither as Ananda nor as Chit, but as pure being. Irundadane ellam. Only if existence is there, anything else is there. Sattaya hi chit, chittaya hi ham. The Atma is shining in its pure being. So seek only being. Are you there irrespective of the circumstance, whatever may be the circumstance? Are you there or not? Don't seek anything other than being. If you seek only being, then nothing can defeat you. Then you will shine as the Swanabhava of Atma, of I. The Sadguru Bhagavan, our greatest blessing for having taken this human birth. He teaches us, don't seek anything from life other than pure being. Irukena, am I there? That is more than sufficient. I am contented with Veru Irukku. Irundadane, only if you exist, anything else is there. Therefore, seek only pure existence, pure being. You will shine as the Akanda Atma. You will shine as the pure being. You will shine as Soham Spurti Taya Arunachala Shiva. This is what is Shiva. This is what is Bhagavan. This is what is Ramana. And the Ramana shining, he consumes all the lokam. And he consumed the sadhaka who started with this blessing, who started this sadhana. And now Ramana alone is shining in all glory, in all beauty, in all anandam, in all chaitanyam, as the pure being. I. Till that self is our own Swanabhava and is experienced effortlessly. Atmavicharam will not leave us. We should not leave Atmavicharam. We should practice whenever a thought arises and tries to say that there is a division. As thinker, thinking and thought, that division is false. Therefore, let go of the thought and inquire who is the thinker for whom the thought has arisen. Who am I? Put the attention which confirmed the division, the false division, back into oneself. The production of all the lokas, as we discussed last week, is complete, and one abides in the self, the pure being, as I. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in Atmavicharam for 10 minutes. Vibhuji is here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you can set the time for us.
Yes, sir, I'll do that. Thank you, sir.
Bhagavate Shri Ramana Namo Ramana. There is a suggestion or a question from Ramananjali sir. Is not the Sat identical to Chit and Ananda? Can the latter be apart from the former? No. They are identical. In fact, there are no three entities there. It is only Satyahi Chit, Chitayahi Akam, and Satchitananda is only the pure being. If I had not communicated that, then please take it from Ramananjali sir that they are not three different entities. There is only the Sat, the pure being, into which the same Sat is Chit, the same Sat Chit is Ananda. So we go to the next verse. Thank you, sir. We are taking from the segment Investigation into Truth, and the subsegment is Atma Vichara again. The verse is 392. In the tranquility that has arisen when the vacillations of the mind have ended through Manolaya, temporary suspension of the mind, which is obtained by restraining the breath in the chest, realize the limitation-free being consciousness by keenly inquiring in the heart with a consciousness that instead of splitting into the five sense perceptions has become one. Verse 392, the subsegment being Atma Vicharam. In the tranquility that has arisen when the vacillations of the mind have ended through Manolaya, temporary suspension of the mind, which is obtained by restraining the breath in the chest, realize the limitation-free being consciousness by keenly inquiring in the heart with a consciousness that instead of splitting into five sense perceptions has become one. In one shloka, Muruganar Swamigal, by Bhagavan's grace, has covered the 5 verses in Upadesha Saram from 11 to 15. The verses that deal with the yoga support, the pranayama support, leading to Manolaya, and from Manolaya one starts Eka Chintana, and Eka Chintana leads to the Atmanishtata. Here, Bhagavan gives one additional clue to all of us, that what happens when prana is observed is a beautiful support Bhagavan has given. When prana is observed, and Bhagavan's method is to observe the breath, so it can be practiced by even those who are having some difficulties in breathing. There is no, the control is not asked for by Bhagavan. Bhagavan says, just observe the breath as Ishvara has allowed you to have. Just observe it. When you observe the breath, the mind quietens down like a bird caught in the net. It has not yet come to hand, but in the net that you have spread for it, the pranayama, the mind which is used to flying off is now in laya. It has got trapped in one of these strands. You have to actually go and catch it and have it in your hand. But the first step has been done, that you have observed the breath and what exactly happens at that time. Bhagavan explains here that the one mind which splits as five and goes into the world of sensory objects. The beautiful support Bhagavan gives is, instead of splitting into five sense perceptions, the consciousness has become one. So what divides into five, and Yoga Vasishtam tells us, as does Vedanta in other places, that each animal, like the elephant, the bee, each of them, just because they are misled by one of their senses, get trapped and lose their existence. Temporarily, of course. They lose their life in that body. The deer, the elephant, the deer, it appears the hunters would make sounds which are very pleasant to the deer and would lead the deer to a trap. So through the ears, it gets trapped. The elephant, of course, is enticed by the opposite sex, and it is said to be enticed by the touch. Like that, the Yoga Vasishtam gives each of the sensory outputs, the consciousness going out, misleading the jiva within, and it cautions the sadhaka that each of those animals were misled by one sense perception, and you have five, all five leading you to five different directions. So what pranayama does, all these five apparent enemies, which are unconsciously taking us out into five different areas where consciousness loses self-knowledge, they are withdrawn. The consciousness is withdrawn and made one. How beautifully Bhagavan says, you have regathered all the five divisions of consciousness and now it is one with the breath. When that is done, all the mental activities related to senses are quietened automatically. So there is a great manolaya. Though the subtle vasanas are not yet attended to, and the moment we leave the breath observation, the mind will fly again. If you loosen the net, loosen the strand, the bird will fly up. One has to keep the net taut, go and hold the bird. Bhagavan says, with that manolaya, in the tranquility that has arisen when the vacillations of the mind have ended through manolaya, the mind is now as though quiet, it is there, it is in laya sthiti. Laya vinashane ubhayarodhane layam gatam punar bhavati nomrutam. If you are just satisfied with that manolaya, how much peace is there just by breath observation? If you stop breath observation, laya gatam punar, it goes back into gati, it goes back into activity, divides through five senses and feels as though there is a sensory world in which it can be satisfied. The consciousness falsely feels, having divided itself and searching in the five divided areas, that it is going to get purna anubhava, this swanubhava. So it withdraws, gets manolaya, and from that what one has to do, that tranquility which is obtained by restraining the breath in the chest, realize the limitation-free consciousness, being consciousness, by keenly inquiring in the heart. So, with that manolaya, with the tranquil consciousness, one should start Atma Vicharam. Bhagavan says that Layagatam Punar Bhavati Nomrutam Pranabandhanat Linamanasa Ekachintana Nashametyadaha. That means that mind which is now tranquil due to pranayama, Pranabandhanat Linamanasam Ekachintana. Who am I? You inquire. Nashametyadaha. You destroy all the vasanas so that the Mind is not arising from its source at all. No singular consciousness observing the breath and dividing through the senses into five. None of this play, none of this losing of the pureness of the being consciousness happens. All vasanas being destroyed because of Ekachintana. Nashtamanaso utkrishta yoginaha krityamasti kim swastitim yataha. Bhagavan says, Nashtamanaso, with the Ekachintana, when all the vasanas are destroyed and the mind does not rise at all, Nashtamanaso utkrishta yoginaha, that is the highest yoga, the Mahayoga. The Mahayogi, krityamasti kim, what is left to do? The Atman is I. It has consumed all the Triputis. Only when the Triputi is seen, there is something to be done. When all the Triputi lokas have been consumed by I, krityamasti kim swastitim yataha atma santushta swatmananda rasanubhuti vivasham. The Atma rasam is where one lives, is where one exists. As Anantnarayan Professor said, the being consciousness, the Sat-Chit is one, is what Bhagavan says here. Till that abidance in the self, Nashtamanaso Utkrishta Yogam, is realized to be our very nature, is Sahaja Sthiti, is natural. There is no need to raise the mind. All the duties have been performed perfectly. Krityamasti kim swastitim yataha. Be in that swastiti where this division, this apparent fear of death is completely erased. There is no birth, there is no death. There is only the Swatmananda Rasa, the Sat Chitta, which is our real nature and which is naturally available. Until such natural abidance in that Sat Chit is realized, one should make the effort of letting go of the thought and turning the attention, which was going through the thought, through the breath, through the five senses out into the sensory world, withdraw it and fix it into the self by asking, for whom is this thought? Who am I? With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in Atma Ucharam for 10 minutes. Vaibhavji, you can set the time for us.
Yes, sir, I'll do that.
Namo Ramana. I request our President, Dr. Sharadaka, to give us the summing up remarks.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. In these two beautiful gifts that Bhagavan has given us today, in the two verses, in the latter verse, there is the mention of withdrawing all the five senses into the prana. That is how Bhagavan has highlighted it, as Nandakumarji has put it for us. And the prana is washed and taken back to the source. In the earlier verse, everything is withdrawn into the jiva as belonging to Ishvara, to be surrendered. Shivaya Namaha, everything is drawn in. And that everything has become only yours. So everything is drawn into that and offered to Shiva. How I understood what Nandakumarji was saying in terms of the emphasis on being is that we seek Ananda. We always seek Ananda. We always seek happiness. That is very conscious effort on our part. We are constantly seeking happiness. We value happiness. We value the Ananda. Whether we understand that it is our nature or not, we value it and we seek it. And we seek the prajna. We seek knowledge. We want to know. We always want to know. We always feel uncomfortable in the absence of knowledge. So we seek the chit, but we do not value the sat. We never value the sat in itself. But if we value the sat, then the chit and the ananda are automatically included in the sat. If we value the ananda apart from the sat, we are not able to get the ananda. If we value the chit apart from the sat, that chit disappears for us in deep sleep. Whereas the true, that sattaya hi chit chittaya hyaham becomes available when the sat alone is sought, when the beauty or the value of being is understood. Very often I say that Bhagavan emphasizes the ananda. Many teachers emphasize the sat and the chit, but Bhagavan is ananda swarupa. He begins, who am I by saying all of you are seeking ananda? But he is the very sat, he is the very being. That's what Soham Spurtitaya, when Nandakumarji was again and again bringing us back to that point, that when we value the being alone, that is when we become ready to drop everything else. Because if we do not value the being in itself, we think that the chit comes from somewhere, the ananda comes from somewhere, and the mind becomes diversified. So to value the being in itself, that alone is everything, that alone is chit, that alone is ananda. It is not that ananda is sat, it is that sat is ananda, it is sat is chit, and sat is chit and ananda. So from that perspective, the emphasis is to seek the sat in who am I. Bhagavan says, seek the I, seek the being, the one who is. Seek the source of the being in whence am I also. Whence am I also. That I, not only in the waking state and the dream state, which have the prajna element, consciousness element very evidently, but of course there is consciousness even in the deep sleep. But that which is not known to us, that which is subsided in the sat. So that is the emphasis I felt that was being given today. And I also, because of the verse talking of the grandeur of surrender, the first verse talking of the grandeur of surrender, I did recall Bhagavan's magnificent surrender to Arunachala. Bhagavan says, Ekana Vari Niduri, and that magnificent surrender of that young boy of 16 who came to Tiruvannamalai on the 1st of September and said, Appa, I have come. I have come. That's all. And then everything, no thought of, everything is thrown away. Literally, Bhagavan showed us that nothing was valued other than Shiva. Because everything he threw away, not retaining even one penny which he could have retained for the next meal. Forget the money, if money had some kind of negative value, even the sweets were thrown away. The actual food was thrown away. Everything was thrown away. And that the bliss of that existence in Shiva, what else can we say of Bhagavan's being over there in that place and afterwards, of course, but in the early days in the temple, literally the child of bliss. Because he is abiding in the self, he has surrendered to the self, and that bliss radiating from him, that radiation of the chit from him, and the total acceptance, the love of saying that first Bhiksha of Arunachala, the way he describes that first Bhiksha of Arunachala, he says, that is what Arunachala gave me. That old rice, which was there, stale rice, which is old water in an old rusted tin with some dried piece of pickle. Arunachala's first Bhiksha, says Bhagavan. What love. And that love, which was every action of Bhagavan, just as we can see Bhagavan ever abiding in the self, never moving away from it, we can see in every moment of Bhagavan's life that everything is Arunachala, everything is the glory of Arunachala, everything. So that which was brought out, highlighted by Nanda Kumarji today, the oneness of bhakti and jnana. And I just heard Nochurana referring to letters from Ramanasramam, how gloriously it begins with the Girivalam of Arunachaleshwara coming to the door of Ramanasramam, as it were, and Bhagavan taking the arati with voice choked with emotion, saying, Appa Pillai Adakam. So that undercurrent never ever changing, that never being in conflict with that. And it is a truth experienced by all the devotees that by Bhagavan's grace, if one surrenders, if one continues to surrender, and Alan Jacobs very sweetly says in his talk, he says, one must go deeper and deeper and keep surrendering. And one goes deeper and deeper and keeps surrendering. Then at one point, when Bhagavan thinks it is the right point, he accepts our surrender. And the same point which Nanda Kumarji made today, he said, Arunachala accepts our surrender. So he says, keep surrendering. That's what happens in self-inquiry by Bhagavan's grace. Every thought is surrendered. Every thought is surrendered back to the self. First back to the I thought, and then the I thought is surrendered back to the self with the question, who am I? And when this happens, then truly love begins to blossom in one's heart. I think the hallmark, actually, if one should say, Bhagavan says, of course, in Ramana Gita, what is the hallmark of a jnani? It is sarva bhuta samatva, love for all beings. In that one consciousness, that one being, that. But then one feels it probably, even when one does inquiry, one might begin to experience the opening out of one's heart. The blossoming of love within oneself gradually happens as one does self-inquiry. And if one is in bhakti, as Nanda Kumarji, not today, but often says, if one has surrendered like cow Lakshmi, if one surrenders all one's children, internally Bhagavan asks us to do it first. We may not have the pakwa to do it like Lakshmi externally, but internally, every thought is our child. So he says, internally at least, you will learn to do it first. internally you offer every child of yours to Bhagavan within as Arunachaleshwara, as the Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala, until he surrounds, embraces, and envelops. And very beautifully, again, that point was emphasized for us today. There is no omniscience also, there is no omnipresence also, because Ekana Vadi Neduri, says Bhagavan, and in this Purno Vibhati Swayam. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ram.
Namo Ramanaya, thank you.
Okay. May I request Vaibhavji and Pratnama to chant the Ashtotram for us?
Yes, sir. Namo Ramana. भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्री रमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावली अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योमि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि। ॐ महासेन महंसेन जाताय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः। ॐ गुरवे नमः। ॐ अखण्ड संविदाकाराय नमः। ॐ महौजसे नमः। ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः। ॐ जगद्धितावताराय नमः। ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः। ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः। ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः। ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः। ॐ सहायाम्बताय नमः। ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः। ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः। ॐ श्रीमद्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः। ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः। ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः। ॐ तीव्राय नमः। ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः। ॐ इन्दुमौळिना पितृमते नमः। ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः। ॐ तपोमयाय नमः। ॐ उदासीनाय नमः। ॐ महायोगिने नमः। ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः। ॐ कुशाग्रदिये नमः। ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः। ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः। ॐ सवित्रे नमः। ॐ स्थिराय नमः। ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः। ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः। ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डितानन
ॐ च्यूतवाद्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। Yeah. You can continue.
ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजगचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ
रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईद्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः।
ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः।
ॐ दृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्रीशूणाचलरिद्भूतस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताभिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिह्न संशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ मृत्यान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणात् बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचञ्चवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणादृशस्तुतिद्रते नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनाये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनाम पूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थानोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रह सुप्रवाह विवश तादात्म्य भावं गतः वृन्निष्ठस्वरवीरत्य तपसा लोकान् पुनासेकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तर ज्योतिषे ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय
Namo Ramana. Thank you, Vaibhavji. Thank you, Pratnama.